Welcome to summer semester 2015 second week. This week in Python scripting we'll be covering the information in chapters 5 and 6. While comments in code can never take the place of good, accurate documentation, they are an easy way to remind us why we coded a certain area the way we did. Feel free to enter the code that you're going to see on the screen during this lecture as practice and get into the habit of annotating your projects and scripts with your name, the lab number, and the date that you're accomplishing the lab. Last week we took a quick look at variables and learned that we didn't need to specify a variable type. Python's smart enough to figure that out. This week, let's go a step further. Notice line 8. Here we have a variable and use a screen input prompt to give us the variable as a text value. Pretty easy when you're using a character string. Numbers, on the other hand, are a bit different. Python still recognizes numeric values, but we have to tell Python whether a number is an integer or a float numeric. For integers, we can use a statement similar to the one in line 5. For a float value, we need to show the decimal when the value is created. Think about how you might go about creating a float variable when you have no idea what the value might be. By the way, an integer variable cannot display a float number, and a float will display an integer, but zeros will be added to the decimal places. Last week we talked about single and double quote marks and how they are interchangeable. Keep in mind that if your text has an apostrophe, you are better using double quotes. You can always have a single quote mark inside double quotes without interrupting the flow of your text. I prefer the double quotes. It makes the code much cleaner. It's your choice in what quote marks you decide to use. There'll be no points off unless your code isn't correct for the situation. Let's go a step further with quotes. Assume you have several lines of text to display. It would be ridiculous to try and print each line of text individually. So we can use 3 single quote marks at the beginning of the text and 3 again at the end of the text, and easily display multiple lines of text on the screen. Yes, this is an exception to my double quote rule, but it makes things much simpler. While we're talking about strings, remember this. Unlike other 4GL languages, once a string variable is created in Python, it cannot be changed. Put a check mark by this slide for future reference in later chapters. It'll save you some time and trouble. In the work you do in this class, all I ask is that you be consistent with the use of your quote marks. Pick a style, learn it, and stick to it. Let's touch on displaying variables. We've already looked at printing a variable on the screen. But what if we want to use our variables as part of a sentence or a description of what the variable means? Well, that's where the .format command comes in. .format allows you to identify the position of a variable by using a position holder. Take a look at line 10. Our variable positions are indicated by numbers enclosed in braces. Notice too that Python expects brace 0 to be the first variable. At the end of the line of text, With our placeholders indicated, we add the dot format command, a set of parentheses, and our variables in the order that we want them displayed. The gotcha here, again, is to always remember to use 0 to represent your first variable. And here's the seamless end result. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about code structure. The general practice is to use a single physical line to represent a single logic object, or an object line. While the code on the screen may be easier to write on one physical line, it can create problems when you are troubleshooting coding errors. I highly recommend you subscribe to this coding convention. Besides, I've had several contracts where you're paid for each line of code you can justifiably create. So this one piece of wisdom could make you all rich sometime in the future. Chapter 6 covers basic computer math functions, and we won't go over that chapter in detail in this lecture. You need to review the chapter and get familiar with the mathematics notations used in Python. However, there are a few notations I'd like to bring to your attention. The first is to the power of. Notice on the screen we show 3 to the 4th power. If you're guessing, the answer's 81. Next, we'll take a look at less than or equal to. In our example, x equals 3, y equals 6. In Python, we indicate less than or equal to with the pound sign. We need to be careful here. Why? Finally, when we have two objects equal to each other, we use a double equal sign. And one more, when we want to indicate that a value is not equal to another value, we use the exclamation point and the equal sign. Take some time to review these operators and get familiar with them. Python is just slightly different than some of the other languages you may have experienced. If you have questions relating to the material in this lecture, feel free to email, stop by, or post your questions on our class discussion board in D2L. Take a break for a moment, and when you come back, we'll talk about this week's lab assignment. For this week's lab assignment, make sure your project has line numbers turned on and your name, date, and lab number, this is lab number 2, is properly indicated at the top of your script. Remember, to receive full credit, you must include a copy of your work and the results of the code run window. For this script, please include a comment before each physical line explaining what the line will accomplish. And the assignment. Don't make it harder than it is. All processes are to be hard-coded. That means the script will not prompt you to enter scores or a team player's name. Finally, use a separate variable to represent each numeric value in your script and each team member. If you need advice, you know how to reach me. Again, this assignment is due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Late work, for whatever reason, is not accepted. Good luck. Have a great week.